The dark side of modern relationship. Money, deception, and family dynamics. This video reveals concerning patterns around relationship commodification, parental responsibility, and the intersection of financial and emotional decision-making in modern relationships. In an age where relationships increasingly intersect with financial motivations, social media has become a window into concerning trends about love, marriage, and parental responsibility. Through a collection of candid social media posts and court proceedings, we uncover 4 key patterns that reveal troubling shifts in how people approach relationships and family obligations. The commoditization of connection. Modern relationship dynamics are increasingly being reduced to financial transactions. Social media influencers openly advocate for monetizing basic social interactions from coffee dates to gym sessions. This pay-me culture represents a fundamental shift from authentic connection to transactional relationships. The trend extends beyond casual dating. Posts reveal individuals treating potential partners as placeholders, manipulating emotions for ego validation rather than seeking genuine connections. As one content creator admitted, "I would tell them anything to reel them in, because it was like an ego boost to have a guy fiend for you." The infidelity factor. The normalization of infidelity emerges as another troubling pattern. One particularly stark example involves a woman who admitted to cheating 10 times during a 5-year relationship while only confessing to one instance. This casual approach to deception highlights a concerning disconnect between commitment and personal gratification. Marriage, when dreams meet reality. Perhaps the most poignant narrative comes from a woman who left her marriage of 23 years just as it reached peak financial success. Her story illustrates the complex interplay between financial security and personal fulfillment. Making nearly $1 million annually through their family business, she chose to walk away only to later question her decision. "I should have stayed. Your kids are like college and one's almost out of high school. You made it to the point where you guys were making so much money and had big houses. You can relax." Her subsequent struggles with financial independence at age 47, complicated by an autoimmune disease, highlight the very real consequences of such decisions. The children's price. The most disturbing trend emerges in the realm of parental responsibility. A court case revealed a mother earning $180,000 annually as an exotic dancer who spent minimal time with her children, 2 days per week, while failing to provide basic necessities like health insurance. Despite her substantial income, she limited her contributions to occasional happy meals and park visits. The judge's ruling ordering $2,576 monthly in child support underscores the legal system's role in enforcing parental obligations. However, it also reveals how financial responsibility often becomes a battleground in failed relationships, with children caught in the crossfire. While individual stories shouldn't be used to make sweeping generalizations, they serve as important warning signs about the direction of interpersonal relationships in our increasingly transactional society. As we navigate these changes, it becomes crucial to reflect on how we can preserve authentic human connection in an era where everything seems to have a price tag. Financial exploitation, transactional relationships. Multiple voices advocate for monetizing basic social interactions. Pay me to be your gym buddy. Focus on extracting financial value from relationships. Child support being misused for personal expenses. $3,700 month case. Infidelity and deception. Admission of serial cheating in a 5-year relationship. Using men as placeholders for ego boost. Deliberately misleading partners about feelings. Marriage and divorce dynamics. Case study of a 23-year marriage ending at peak financial success. Woman expressing regret about leaving financial security. Tension between financial stability and personal happiness. Legal system's role in enforcing obligations. Child support court case. Mother earning $180K/year as exotic dancer. Only spending time with children 2 days week. Judge ordering $2,576 month in child support payments. Lack of health insurance provision for children. That's the price you've got to pay. Yes, you heard me right. $2,576 a month in child support. Thank you. I've seen relationships crumble over less, but here we are. Let me explain how things fell apart. I didn't just destroy a marriage, I wrecked my entire family. Why? Because I put a price tag on every interaction. A coffee date? Pay me. A walk in the park? Pay me. Gym buddy? Yep, pay me for that too. Snapchat messages or photos? That'll cost you. Honesty? Forget about it. I cheated 10 times but only admitted to 1. It's a cruel world out here, and I played the game for my ego, using placeholders who had no future with me just to feel desired. The harsh reality. Many men don't actually want relationships. They just want someone there for convenience. But when it comes to marriage, the system is unbalanced. Men's obligations, like financial support, are enforceable by law, while women's contributions, kindness, care, and warmth are not. A one-sided contract like this is a risky game for men. Take this child support case as an example. I earn $180,000 a year and work hard, but I only have my kids 2 days a week. The rest of the time, they live with their father, who handles school drop-offs, activities, and everyday care. Yet, I thought I could get away without contributing financially. Now I've been ordered to pay $2,576 monthly, including Medicaid reimbursements. The judge made it clear, this is about the kids, not personal grudges. As for my past decisions, I stayed in a 23-year marriage, supported my ex's career, and built a life I eventually walked away from. I thought I'd find freedom, but now I'm 47 with no 401k and struggling with an autoimmune disease. It's terrifying to start over. Some days I wonder if I should have stayed. It wasn't that bad, was it? But regret doesn't pay the bills or undo what's been done. Life's a mess, and the internet loves to watch it unfold. From bad decisions to courtroom drama, it's all here for everyone to see. But at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is doing right by the kids, Evan, if it means paying the price I once tried to avoid. Conclusion. These patterns paint a concerning picture of modern relationship dynamics. The commodification of human connection, normalization of deception, and prioritization of personal desires over family responsibilities suggest a broader cultural shift away from traditional relationship values. Commodification is the process of transforming something that is not typically considered a commodity into a product that can be bought and sold in the marketplace. Here's a breakdown. What it means: turning things into goods. It's about taking something that might have intrinsic value, social value, or cultural significance and making it into an object for commercial exchange. Focus on profit. The primary goal becomes generating profit from the item rather than its original purpose or inherent value. Examples: water. In many parts of the world, water is becoming a commodified resource, where access is restricted to those who can pay. Human body parts. Organ donation and surrogacy raise ethical concerns about the commodification of the human body. Cultural traditions. Traditional festivals or ceremonies can be commodified by turning them into tourist attractions. Data. Personal data is increasingly commodified, collected and sold by companies for targeted advertising. Criticisms. Exploitation. Commodification can lead to the exploitation of people, resources, and cultural values. Devaluation. It can devalue things that were previously considered sacred or beyond the realm of market exchange. Inequality. Commodification can exacerbate existing inequalities by making essential goods and services accessible only to those who can afford them. In essence, commodification is about shifting the focus from the inherent value or social significance of something to its potential for generating profit. This shift can have profound social, economic, and ethical implications. The price of love. How commodification is reshaping human relationships in the 21st century. In recent years, a profound transformation has been reshaping the landscape of human relationships. The increasing commodification of interpersonal connections, particularly between men and women, represents a fundamental shift in how society approaches love, marriage, sexuality, and social bonds. This article examines the multifaceted implications of treating human relationships as marketable commodities, exploring how this trend affects individuals, families, and society at large. The rise of relationship commodification, historical context. The commodification of relationships isn't entirely new. Throughout history, marriages have often had economic components, from dowries to strategic alliances between families. However, the current transformation is unprecedented in its scope and explicit nature. Today's commodification extends beyond traditional marriage arrangements into nearly every aspect of human connection. Digital acceleration. The digital revolution has accelerated this trend significantly. Dating apps have transformed the search for love into a marketplace where people can be sorted, filtered, and selected based on specific criteria. Social media platforms have created new opportunities for monetizing attention and affection, leading to what some scholars term the attention economy of relationships. The multiple dimensions of modern relationship commodification. Dating and courtship. The traditional courtship process has been dramatically altered by the emergence of dating apps and social media. These platforms have created what economists might call a relationship marketplace, with several distinctive features. Profile optimization becomes a form of personal marketing. Matching algorithms treat compatibility as a mathematical equation. The paradox of choice leads to shopping behavior in partner selection. Time investment in relationship building is increasingly monetized. Marriage and long-term commitments. The commodification of marriage manifests in several ways. Financial considerations. Prenuptial agreements becoming increasingly detailed and common. Marriage decisions increasingly influenced by economic factors. Rise of strategic marriages for financial or social advancement. Legal framework. Marriage as a contract with specific economic terms. Division of assets and responsibilities becoming more explicitly defined. Monetization of domestic labor and caregiving. Intimate relations. The commodification of intimacy has become increasingly apparent. Physical intimacy. Rise of sugar dating and explicit transactional relationships. Monetization of emotional labor. Commercialization of sexual consent. Emotional connection. Paid emotional support services. Professional cuddling services. Rental family members in some societies. Societal implications. Impact on gender relations. The commodification of relationships has significant implications for gender dynamics. Power dynamics. Shift in traditional gender roles. Economic leverage in relationship negotiations. New forms of gender-based exploitation. Social expectations. Changing standards of attractiveness and success. Pressure to maintain market value. Conflicting messages about empowerment versus objectification. Economic consequences. The financial implications of relationship commodification are far-reaching. Personal finance, increased cost of dating and relationship maintenance, financial pressure in relationship formation, economic barriers to marriage and family formation. Broader economic impact. Growth of relationship-related industries, impact on housing markets and family formation. Economic inequality affecting relationship. Opportunities. Social structure changes. The commodification of relationships is reshaping social structures. Family formation. Delayed marriage and childbearing. Changes in family planning decisions. Impact on child-rearing practices. Community bonds. Weakening of traditional social networks. Commercialization of community support. Changes in social capital formation. Psychological impact. Individual well-being. The commodification of relationships affects personal psychological health, self-worth, and identity. Internalization of market values. Impact on self-esteem and personal validation. Pressure to maintain marketable attributes. Emotional development, changes in attachment pattern. Impact on intimacy and vulnerability. Stress and anxiety related to relationship performance. Collective psychology. Society-wide psychological effects include social norms, changing expectations about relationship formation, evolution of social scripts for intimacy, impact on collective understanding of love and commitment, cultural values, shift in relationship priorities, changes in how success in relationships is measured, impact on cultural narratives about love and marriage, legal and ethical considerations. Legal framework. The commodification of relationships raises important legal questions. Contract law, evolution of relationship contracts, legal recognition of new relationship forms, protection against exploitation. Family law, changes in marriage and divorce legislation, child custody and support considerations, property rights in relationships. Ethical implications. The ethical dimensions of relationship commodification are complex. Moral considerations, boundaries between love and commerce, ethics of relationship monetization, impact on human dignity and autonomy. Social justice, access to relationship opportunities, economic inequality in relationship formation, protection of vulnerable individuals. Future trends and considerations. Technological impact. Emerging technologies will continue to shape relationship commodification, digital innovation, AI and relationship matching. Virtual and augmented reality in relationships, blockchain and relationship contracts. Data analytics, relationship prediction algorithms, monetization of relationship data. Privacy concerns in digital relationships, social evolution. Future social changes may include relationship models, new forms of partnership and commitment, evolution of family structures, changes in social expectations, economic integration, further integration of relationships and commerce, new relationship-based business models, economic impact on social institutions. Resistance and alternative movements. Countercultural responses. Some segments of society are pushing back against commodification. Traditional movements. Revival of traditional relationship values. Focus on non-commercial aspects of relationships. Community-based support systems. Alternative approaches. New relationship paradigms. Emphasis on authentic connection. Non-monetary exchange systems. Social innovations. Creative responses to commodification include community initiatives, support groups and networks. Alternative relationship models. Collective care arrangements, educational programs, relationship skills development. Financial literacy in relationships, emotional intelligence training, policy implications, regulatory considerations. The commodification of relationships raises policy challenges, legal framework. Protection against exploitation. Regulation of relationship services, rights and responsibilities in new relationship forms, social policy, support for family formation, access to relationship resources, protection of vulnerable groups, social support systems. Policy responses may include public services, relationship counseling and support. Financial assistance for families. Community building initiatives, educational programs, relationship education in schools, financial literacy programs, social skills development, recommendations for healthy relationship development. Individual level. Steps for maintaining healthy relationships in a commodified world. Personal development. Building self-awareness and emotional intelligence. Developing clear boundaries. Maintaining authentic connections. Relationship skills. Communication development. Conflict resolution abilities. Balance between practical and emotional aspects. Societal level. Recommendations for society, cultural change. Promoting balanced relationship values. Supporting diverse relationship models, maintaining human dignity in relationships. Structural support, developing supportive institutions, creating economic opportunities, building community networks. The commodification of relationships between men and women represents a fundamental shift in human social organization. While this transformation brings certain efficiencies and clarities to relationship formation and maintenance, it also raises profound questions about the nature of human connection and the future of intimate relationships. The challenge for society lies in finding a balance between the practical realities of modern life and the preservation of authentic human connection. This requires conscious effort at both individual and societal levels to ensure that the commodification of relationships doesn't compromise the essential human needs for genuine intimacy, emotional security, and meaningful connection. As we move forward, it's crucial to develop frameworks that can accommodate both the practical aspects of relationship formation and the preservation of human dignity and authentic connection. This may require new social innovations, policy responses, and cultural adaptations to ensure that relationships continue to serve their fundamental purpose of providing emotional fulfillment and social stability while adapting to modern realities. The future of human relationships will likely continue to be shaped by these competing forces of commodification and authentic connection. Success in navigating this landscape will require both individual awareness and collective wisdom in building relationship structures that serve both practical and emotional human needs. The implications for society. When human relationships between male and female, sex, marriage, and social life are commodified. Commodification, the process of transforming something not typically considered a commodity into a product that can be bought and sold, has far-reaching implications for human relationships, sex, marriage, and social life. This phenomenon has reshaped societal norms, ethical boundaries, and interpersonal dynamics in profound and sometimes troubling ways. By focusing on profit and marketability, commodification shifts the emphasis from the intrinsic and social value of these relationships to their economic potential. This article explores the multifaceted effects of commodification on human connections, societal structures, and cultural values, providing a comprehensive analysis of its implications. The nature of commodification in human relationships. Definition and concept. Commodification in human relationships involves treating interactions, emotions, and social bonds as products or services that can be exchanged for monetary or other tangible benefits. This transformation occurs when intrinsic qualities like love, trust, and companionship are subordinated to transactional values. Examples of commodification in relationships: dating apps and matchmaking services. Platforms like Tinder and Bumble monetize romantic connections, framing relationships as accessible through subscription fees or premium features. Sex work and pornography. These industries epitomize the commodification of sexual relationships, transforming intimacy into a marketable product. Influencer culture. Personal lives and relationships are commodified for social media content, where likes, views, and sponsorships become the currency. Marriage as an economic transaction. The cost of weddings, dowries, and prenups reflects the commodification of marriage. Sex as a commodity. The rise of commercialized sex. Sexual commodification is one of the most visible examples of this trend. From escort services to adult entertainment, the sexual act has been transformed into a commodity with significant global economic value. Prostitution. Often referred to as the world's oldest profession, prostitution reflects the explicit commodification of sex. Adult entertainment industry. The multi-billion-dollar pornography industry thrives on selling sexual gratification as a product. OnlyFans and cam sites. Platforms enable individuals to monetize their sexual content directly, blending personal and professional boundaries. Implications for society. Normalization of transactional sex. Commodification blurs the lines between intimacy and commerce, creating new norms around sexual relationships. Exploitation and inequality. Vulnerable individuals, particularly women and marginalized groups, are often exploited within this system. Erosion of emotional intimacy. When sex is reduced to a commodity, its emotional and relational dimensions may be devalued. Marriage and commodification. Marriage as an economic institution. Historically, marriage has often been viewed as a strategic alliance for economic or social gain. However, modern commodification has intensified this perspective. The wedding industry. The global wedding industry, valued at hundreds of billions of dollars, turns marriage into a consumerist event. Prenuptial agreements. These legal contracts reflect the transactional nature of modern marriages. Matchmaking services. High-end matchmaking firms charge exorbitant fees, treating love as a luxury product. Consequences of commodification in marriage. Transactional relationships. Emotional bonds may take a back seat to financial and social considerations. High divorce rates. When marriages are built on economic foundations, they may falter under emotional strain. Economic disparities. The commodification of marriage exacerbates class divides, as lavish weddings and prenuptial agreements are often inaccessible to lower-income groups. Social life and the marketization of interactions. Social media and influencer culture. The rise of social media has transformed personal interactions into monetizable content. Friendships, relationships, and even family dynamics are curated for public consumption and financial gain. Influencers. People monetize their personal lives, turning friendships, parenting, and partnerships into marketable assets. Virtual communities. Platforms like Patreon and Discord allow users to sell access to social groups, commodifying belonging. Dating as a marketplace. Apps and online platforms have transformed dating into a consumer experience. Algorithmic love. Dating apps prioritize marketable traits and gamify love, reducing relationships to swipes and clicks. Subscription models. Premium features create a hierarchy of access, commodifying the chance to connect. Impacts on social structures. Superficial connections. The emphasis on marketable traits undermines deep, meaningful relationships. Increased loneliness. Despite increased connectivity, commodification often leaves individuals feeling isolated. Erosion of trust. When relationships are transactional, trust becomes a rare and undervalued commodity. Ethical concerns and societal critiques, exploitation and power dynamics. Gender inequality. Women are disproportionately affected by the commodification of relationships, often being objectified or exploited. Class disparities. The commodification of marriage and social life widens economic gaps, as only the wealthy can afford to participate fully in these systems. Devaluation of human bonds. Loss of sacredness, transforming relationships into commodities, strips them of their intrinsic value. Emotional alienation. People may struggle to form genuine connections in a market-driven society. Ethical boundaries. The commodification of sex, marriage, and social life raises questions about consent, exploitation, and the moral limits of market forces. Long-term implications for society. Cultural shifts. Normalization of market thinking. As commodification becomes widespread, societal values shift toward profit and efficiency, even in personal relationships. Changing gender roles. The commodification of relationships challenges traditional gender norms, creating new dynamics and expectations. Economic impact. Consumerism in relationships. The commodification of marriage and dating fuels consumer spending, benefiting certain industries but creating economic pressures on individuals. Financial inequalities. Economic disparities are reinforced as commodified relationships prioritize wealth and status. Psychological effects. Mental health challenges. The transactional nature of commodified relationships can lead to loneliness, anxiety, and depression. Identity and self-worth. When relationships are commodified, individuals may struggle to find value outside of their marketability. Moving forward, alternatives and solutions. Reclaiming intrinsic values. Promoting emotional connection. Society must prioritize genuine emotional bonds over transactional relationships. Education and awareness. Raising awareness about the effects of commodification can encourage individuals to resist its influence. Policy and regulation. Protecting vulnerable groups. Governments and organizations must address exploitation in commodified systems, particularly in sex work and marriage. Regulating markets. Oversight of industries that commodify relationships can help mitigate harmful effects. Cultural change. Redefining success. Shifting societal values away from profit and materialism toward emotional well-being and connection. Encouraging community. Building strong, supportive communities can counteract the isolating effects of commodification. Commodification, the process of transforming something not typically considered a commodity into a product for market exchange, has infiltrated many aspects of human life. While the commodification of goods and services is a cornerstone of modern capitalism, its encroachment into realms traditionally considered sacred or personal raises profound ethical and social concerns. This article explores the multifaceted implications of commodification on human relationships, sex, marriage, and social life, examining how the pursuit of profit can distort, devalue, and ultimately undermine the very fabric of human connection. The commodification of intimacy. Love is a market transaction. The concept of love, once considered a purely emotional and spiritual experience, is increasingly being framed within the language of the marketplace. Dating apps, for instance, have transformed the act of finding a partner into a consumer experience. Users swipe through profiles, evaluating potential matches based on a curated set of attributes, much like selecting items on an online shopping platform. The emphasis shifts from genuine connection to maximizing return on investment, finding the most desirable partner based on predefined criteria. This commodification of intimacy extends beyond dating. The rise of relationship coaches and love gurus reflects a growing market for services that promise to enhance one's marketability in the dating world. Techniques like game and negging are presented as strategies for manipulating social interactions to increase one's chances of attracting a partner, reducing genuine connection to a calculated game of manipulation. Furthermore, the commodification of intimacy extends to the realm of sex. The rise of the sex industry, including pornography, sex work, and sex toys, has normalized the objectification and commodification of the human body. Sex, once considered an intimate act of love and connection, can be reduced to a transactional exchange, with individuals treated as commodities to be bought and sold. Marriage, a contractual agreement or a sacred union. The institution of marriage, traditionally viewed as a sacred union based on love, commitment, and mutual respect, is increasingly being framed as a contractual agreement. Prenuptial agreements, which outline the division of assets in case of divorce, reflect a growing emphasis on the financial aspects of marriage. Moreover, the rise of online dating platforms and matchmaking services has introduced market-driven logic into the process of finding a spouse. Compatibility is often assessed based on quantifiable factors, such as income, education, and physical attractiveness, rather than emotional compatibility and shared values. This can lead to a focus on maximizing returns in the marriage market, prioritizing partners who can enhance one's social status or financial security. The commodification of social life, from community to consumerism. Social life itself is increasingly being commodified. Social media platforms, while offering opportunities for connection, also function as marketplaces for attention and validation. Users are encouraged to curate their online personas, presenting idealized versions of themselves to attract followers and likes. This can lead to a focus on superficiality and self-promotion, as individuals strive to build a strong online brand. Furthermore, social events are often framed as consumer experiences. From lavish weddings to extravagant birthday parties, the emphasis shifts from genuine human connection to creating a memorable spectacle. These events are often meticulously planned and documented, with social media playing a crucial role in showcasing the success of the event. The ethical implications of commodification. The commodification of intimacy, marriage, and social life raises profound ethical concerns. Dehumanization. Treating human relationships as market transactions can dehumanize individuals, reducing them to objects of consumption and objectification. Exploitation. The sex industry, for example, can exploit vulnerable individuals, particularly women and children, for profit. Inequality. The commodification of social life can exacerbate existing inequalities, as access to desirable partners, social circles, and experiences is often determined by economic and social status. Erosion of trust. The emphasis on superficiality and self-promotion can erode trust and authenticity in human relationships. Loss of meaning. When intimacy, marriage, and social life are primarily viewed through the lens of the marketplace, their inherent value and meaning can be lost. Resisting the commodification of intimacy. Resisting the commodification of intimacy requires a conscious effort to prioritize genuine connection. Focus on building authentic relationships based on empathy, respect, and shared values. Challenge market-driven norms. Question the emphasis on external validation and strive for inner fulfillment. Cultivate a culture of empathy and compassion. Promote social values that prioritize human connection and well-being over material gain. Support ethical consumption. Make conscious choices that support businesses and practices that prioritize human values and ethical considerations. Reclaim the meaning of intimacy. Redefine intimacy as a sacred and meaningful experience beyond the realm of market exchange. Conclusion. The commodification of intimacy has profound implications for the way we understand and experience human relationships. By recognizing the dangers of market logic infiltrating these intimate spheres, we can begin to resist these trends and cultivate a society that values genuine human connection, empathy, and compassion above all else. Further exploration. The impact of technology on human relationships. Explore the role of social media, dating apps, and other technologies in shaping our understanding of intimacy and connection. The ethics of the sex industry. Investigate the ethical concerns surrounding sex work, pornography, and the commodification of the human body. The role of culture and societal values. Examine how cultural norms and values influence our understanding of intimacy, marriage, and social life. The potential for alternative models of social organization. Explore alternative models of social organization that prioritize human connection and well-being over market-driven values. Provides a starting point for a deeper exploration of the complex and multifaceted implications of the commodification of intimacy. By engaging in critical reflection and promoting alternative models of human connection, we can strive to create a society where intimacy, marriage, and social life are valued for their inherent meaning and not merely as commodities to be bought and sold. Disclaimer. This article presents a complex issue with various perspectives. The views expressed here are intended for informational purposes only and do not necessarily reflect the views of any particular individual or organization. The implications of commodification on human relationships, sex, marriage, and social life. In the modern world, commodification is a pervasive force that has transformed various aspects of human life, from tangible goods to abstract concepts. Commodification involves converting something that traditionally holds intrinsic or social value into a commodity that can be bought and sold. This process has far-reaching implications for human relationships, sex, marriage, and social life. This article delves into the effects of commodification in these areas, examining both the benefits and the drawbacks. Understanding commodification. Definition and process. Commodification is the process by which things, services, or relationships are transformed into commodities. This process involves turning things into goods. Commodification converts objects, services, and relationships that have intrinsic or social value into commercial products. Focus on profit. The primary aim becomes generating profit rather than preserving the original purpose or value of the commodity. Examples of commodification. Water. In many parts of the world, water is treated as a commodity, with access often restricted to those who can afford it. Human body parts. Organ donation and surrogacy raise ethical concerns about the commodification of the human body. Cultural traditions. Traditional festivals and ceremonies are sometimes commodified by turning them into tourist attractions. Data. Personal data is increasingly commodified, collected, and sold by companies for targeted advertising. Criticisms of commodification. Exploitation. Commodification can lead to the exploitation of people, resources, and cultural values. Devaluation. It can devalue things that were previously considered sacred or beyond the realm of market exchange. Inequality. Commodification can exacerbate existing inequalities by making essential goods and services accessible only to those who can afford them. Commodification of human relationship. Impact on interpersonal relationships. Transactional nature. Commodification can lead to relationships becoming transactional, where interactions are driven by financial or material gain rather than emotional connection. Superficial bonds. Relationships may become more superficial, with a focus on appearances and material wealth rather than genuine connection and empathy. Examples: online dating. The rise of online dating platforms has commodified the process of finding romantic partners, often prioritizing physical attractiveness and financial stability over deeper connections. Social media. Social media platforms can commodify friendships and social interactions, where the value of relationships is measured by likes, followers, and engagement metrics. Criticisms. Erosion of trust. The transactional nature of commodified relationships can erode trust and mutual respect, leading to a sense of isolation and disconnection. Emotional exploitation. Individuals may exploit relationships for personal gain, leading to emotional harm and diminished sense of self-worth. Commodification of sex. Impact on sexual relationships. Commercialization. Sex can become commercialized, where sexual services are bought and sold as commodities. Objectification. Commodification can lead to the objectification of individuals, where they are valued solely for their sexual appeal or performance. Examples: sex work. The sex industry, including prostitution and pornography, exemplifies the commodification of sex. Dating apps. Some dating apps and platforms may encourage casual hookups and sexual encounters, commodifying the act of sex. Criticisms. Ethical concerns. The commodification of sex raises ethical concerns about consent, exploitation, and the dignity of individuals. Impact on intimacy. Commercializing sex can undermine the emotional and intimate aspects of sexual relationships, reducing them to mere transactions. Commodification of marriage. Impact on marital relationships. Economic factors. Marriage can be influenced by economic considerations, where financial stability and social status become primary motivators for forming marital bonds. Transactional marriages. Marriages may become transactional, where partners exchange resources, status, or benefits rather than forming genuine emotional connections. Examples: dowries and bride. Price. In some cultures, the practice of dowries and bride prices commodifies marriage, where partners or their families exchange goods and money. Prenuptial agreements. Prenuptial agreements can reflect the commodification of marriage by prioritizing financial considerations over emotional bonds. Criticisms. Erosion of romantic ideals. The commodification of marriage can erode romantic ideals, where love and emotional connection take a backseat to economic considerations. Inequality in marriages. Transactional marriages may perpetuate inequality, where one partner may be economically dependent on the other, leading to power imbalances. Commodification of social life. Impact on social interactions. Consumer culture. Social life can be heavily influenced by consumer culture, where social status and identity are defined by material possessions and consumption patterns. Commercialization of leisure. Leisure activities and social events can become commodified, where participation is determined by one's ability to pay. Examples. Event ticketing. The commodification of social events, such as concerts, festivals, and sports, restricts access to those who can afford tickets. Social media influencers. Social media influencers commodify their social lives by monetizing their personal experiences and interactions. Criticisms. Exclusivity. The commodification of social life can create exclusivity, where only those with financial means can participate in certain social activities. Superficial connections. Consumer culture can lead to superficial social connections, where relationships are based on material wealth rather than genuine interaction. Ethical and social implications. Exploitation and inequality. Commodification can lead to exploitation and exacerbate existing inequalities. Those who cannot afford commodified goods and services may be excluded from essential aspects of life, such as education, healthcare, and social participation. Devaluation of human experience. The commodification of relationships, sex, marriage, and social life can devalue human experiences that were once considered sacred or intrinsically valuable. Emotional bonds, intimacy, and social connections may be reduced to mere transactions, diminishing their depth and significance. Erosion of trust and authenticity. The transactional nature of commodified interactions can erode trust and authenticity in human relationships. People may become more guarded and less willing to form genuine connections, leading to social isolation and a sense of disconnection. Impact on mental health. The pressure to conform to commodified standards of success, beauty, and social status can negatively impact mental health. Individuals may experience anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem as they strive to meet unrealistic expectations. Potential solutions and alternatives. Reclaiming intrinsic value. Emphasizing emotional bonds. Fostering emotional connections and prioritizing genuine relationships over transactional interactions can help reclaim the intrinsic value of human relationships. Promoting ethical consumption. Encouraging ethical consumption practices that prioritize social and environmental values over profit can counteract the negative effects of commodification. Creating inclusive communities. Access to essential services. Ensuring that essential services, such as education, healthcare, and social participation, are accessible to all, regardless of financial means, can mitigate the negative impacts of commodification. Community-based initiatives. Supporting community-based initiatives that promote inclusivity, cooperation, and mutual support can help create a sense of belonging and social cohesion. Advocating for ethical policies. Regulation and oversight. Implementing regulations and oversight mechanisms to prevent exploitation and ensure fair practices in commodified industries can help protect vulnerable populations. Advocacy and awareness. Raising awareness about the ethical and social implications of commodification and advocating for policies that prioritize human well-being over profit can drive positive change. Here quote S, a rewritten version of the text with a streamlined and cohesive tone while keeping the essence of the original content intact. I'm 42, newly single, and decided to give dating another shot. I showed up at the bar for a date tonight, only to get stood up. It's baffling how some people treat dating so casually,
Who even pays on the first date anymore? Personally, I prefer to split the bill. It just feels fair. But honestly, it's moments like these that make me wonder if dating is even worth it. People often say, you'll find someone eventually. But reality doesn't always align with optimism. Women, for example, often complain about men pumping and dumping or not committing, especially the ones who initially caught their attention. These women seem to chase perfection, overlooking the men who are actually good for them because they want someone extraordinary, while not always offering the same in return. At the same time, many men are opting out of the dating game altogether. They're tired of the constant scrutiny, questions about income, career, and what they can provide. It feels less like a partnership and more like a job interview. Add in the fear of being judged or accused unfairly, and the stakes become even higher. For women who struggle with being single, social media sometimes amplifies the issue. Instead of pursuing meaningful connections, they focus on creating content about their loneliness to gain likes and sympathy. It's almost as if being single becomes their brand. Ironically, they could find relationships if they were willing to meet people halfway, but often their expectations are sky-high. Then there's the growing divide between men and women, fueled by misunderstandings, societal shifts, and unrealistic standards. Men feel underappreciated, while women feel overburdened. Some women step into traditional male roles out of necessity, while others hold on to romantic ideals that don't align with reality. So where does that leave us? Single men are focusing on their hobbies, jobs, and personal goals, while many women claim to be looking for love but reject men who don't meet a perfect checklist. This dynamic creates a cycle of frustration, with both sides blaming the other. At the core of it all, relationships are about mutual respect, compromise, and realistic expectations. But in today's dating landscape, many are unwilling to adjust, preferring to point fingers or remain in their comfort zones. If things don't change, both men and women may continue to feel isolated, even as they navigate a world more connected than ever. If you've never needed a divorce lawyer, it's a good thing. It means either you've never been married, or your marriage is thriving to the extent that a divorce lawyer office is irrelevant to your life. By the time people step into a divorce lawyer office, something has gone terribly wrong. No one ever plans to meet a divorce lawyer. The reality of marriage and divorce. If you marry, there's about a 70% chance your marriage will end in divorce. This statistic doesn't even account for those who consult a divorce lawyer, but ultimately choose to stay married, whether for financial reasons, the kids, or simply because they decide it's easier to remain in an unhappy union. Adding these situations to the equation, the likelihood of marriage failing either through divorce or remaining in misery becomes even higher. It's not unreasonable to estimate that around 80% of marriages don't meet expectations. This isn't meant to sound cynical. I find marriage to be a beautiful institution, and like anyone, some people get teary-eyed at weddings. But looking at the statistics, it's hard not to see the risks involved. Fascinatingly, despite these odds, 89% of people who divorce remarry within 5 years. This shows how deeply ingrained and appealing the concept of marriage is in human psychology, even after a failure. What problem does marriage solve? If asked about the purpose of a cup, you'd say it helps you drink without spilling. But with marriage, the answer isn't as clear. It's assumed to be a natural progression of a serious relationship, so much so that if a couple announces they're getting married, the reaction is universally positive. But if they say they're choosing not to marry, people assume there's a problem. Yet when you consider the divorce rate and the number of people who stay together but are unhappy, it's logical to approach marriage with caution, much like climbing Mount Everest, but with even higher odds of failure. The illusion of this time, it's different. Even after a difficult divorce, many believe the next marriage will be different. Take, for example, A man who endured one of the most grueling divorces, he's now marrying someone 30 years younger, whom he met just 4 months ago. Despite his prior experience, he insists he's never felt this kind of love before. While it's not my place to judge, it's hard not to question whether his logic is clouded by romance and optimism. It's a common phenomenon. People convince themselves that the new relationship is different, even when the circumstances suggest otherwise. Gold diggers and patterns. I've seen patterns of gold-digging behavior. These situations often involve significant age or financial disparities and rushed decisions. While not every relationship with such dynamics is transactional, they are worth approaching with caution and clarity. The complexities of love, marriage, and prenups. When discussing relationships that involve significant financial disparity, one term often comes to mind: gold digger. But let's unpack that term for a moment because it carries a lot of judgment. Relationships at their core are built on exchanges, an economy of sorts. This isn't to devalue love. In fact, love is multifaceted. It's an emotion, a verb, and yes, it's an economy. In healthy relationships, this exchange can be symbiotic and beautiful. Imagine a hard-working, serious individual paired with someone who brings lightness and humor to their life. The first partner helps provide structure and security, while the second encourages them to relax, smile, and enjoy the moment. They complement one another, each offering something the other lacks. Now let's consider another scenario. A wealthy, successful man meets a younger, vibrant woman, someone with immense talent but limited resources. She may be stuck in a thankless job, unable to fully explore her potential as, say, a bartender. He steps in saying, "Quite your bartender job. I have the means to support you, and I'd love to see you succeed." In return, she brings energy, creativity, and inspiration into his life. Is that unfair or dishonest? Not at all. Both parties bring value to the table, albeit in different forms. So when someone dismissively labels a woman as a gold digger, it's worth asking, is it wrong for her to value financial stability any more than it is for a man to value youth, beauty, or vibrancy? Relationships are about mutual benefit, and when entered into honestly, these exchanges are perfectly legitimate. The trouble with delusion in relationships. The problems arise when there's a lack of honesty, particularly with oneself. For example, there are men who are significantly overweight, have no striking personality traits, yet are billionaires. They'll be engaged to someone far younger and more attractive and genuinely believe the relationship is based on their personality, not their wealth. That's the kind of self-delusion that's troubling. There's a big difference between two people acknowledging what each brings to the table versus one partner failing to recognize the underlying dynamics. It's one thing to say, we're each fulfilling each other's needs, and quite another to believe, they love me for who I am, when the truth is more complex. The prenup, safeguarding love and finances. This is where prenuptial agreements come into play. A prenup is essentially a contract between two people that outlines the rules governing the financial aspects of their marriage. It's about setting expectations up front and ensuring that both parties are on the same page. When people talk about marriage, they often conflate its emotional, social, and legal dimensions. Spiritually, marriage can be a sacrament or a covenant. Socially, it's a merging of lives and destinies. Legally, however, it's a binding contract, one of the most significant you'll ever enter. Yet most people have no idea what rights and obligations they've agreed to simply by getting married. For instance, laws governing spousal support or property division can change after you're married. In America, alimony used to be tax deductible. That changed in 2016 when new legislation removed that benefit. Imagine entering into a lifelong commitment only to find the rules have shifted beneath your feet. A prenuptial arrangement gives couples the chance to create their own rules, tailored to their unique relationship, rather than relying on the one-size-fits-all legislation written by politicians. And who better to define those terms than the two people who've chosen each other out of 8 billion on the planet? They are deeply in love, heading into marriage without a prenuptial, and unwilling to even entertain the idea. They're so blinded by their partner's charms or the romance of the moment that they refuse to consider the practicalities. But love, like any economy, can falter. If you wouldn't leave the fate of your financial future to chance in business, why would you do so in marriage? At its heart, a prenuptial arrangement isn't about a lack of trust or faith in love. It's about protecting both parties and ensuring that if things don't work out, the process of uncoupling is as fair and painless as possible. It's an act of foresight, not cynicism. After all, entering marriage without understanding its legal implications is like starting a business without reading the contract. A final thought. Relationships are complex. They're built on a foundation of love, yes, but also on mutual benefit, shared goals, and a recognition of each other's needs. Whether it's a partnership based on complementary traits, shared dreams, or practical exchanges, the key is honesty, both with your partner and yourself. And if you're planning to marry, take the time to consider a prenuptial agreement. It's not about undermining romance. It's about ensuring your love story has a fair and secure foundation. Because, as much as we'd like to believe in happily ever after, a little preparation never hurts. When people think about prenuptial agreement, they often picture them as a safety net for splitting assets after a breakup. It's a concept that's been dramatized in countless movies and cultural narratives, essentially boiling down to deciding who gets what when things fall apart. But here's the challenge. How can you decide in advance what happens 10 or 20 years down the line when you don't know what you'll have at that point? The simplest prenuptial arrangement could be described as the yours, mine, and ours structure. Here's how it works. If something is in my name, be it an asset or a liability, it's mine, free of claims or obligations to you. If it's in your name, it's yours, with no strings attached from me. If it's in our joint names, we share responsibility for any obligations and split the value equally if it's an asset. It sounds straightforward, but here's the kicker. You can't just draft a prenuptial agreement, sign it, and forget about it. Marriage is a dynamic partnership, and part of that means having open conversations about money and shared responsibilities, something every couple should theoretically be able to do. For example, if one partner gets a big bonus at work, they might decide to allocate a portion to their personal account and another portion to the joint account. At that point, the other partner might ask, "Why so much in your personal account? Is something wrong between us?" These conversations help ensure transparency and alignment. This brings us to a bigger question. Why do we marry in the first place? What do we owe each other in this partnership? It's not uncommon for someone to claim, "I supported my partner while they built their business, so I deserve half of it." That's a logical argument. But if we extend the logic further, where does it end? Do you also owe your partner's parents for raising them into the person who supported you? How about their grandparents who shaped their parents? It's a slippery slope. That's why clarity is key. Imagine going to an estate agent asking for a price of a house and being told, "It's a good amount." You'd never agree to such vague terms. The same principle applies here. Whether it's a percentage of earnings or some other formula, the rules should be clear from the start. Now, many people hesitate to bring up prenuptial agreement because they fear it might seem like planning for failure. But here's the truth. All marriages end, either in death or divorce. Planning for the latter doesn't mean you're anticipating it any more than buying life insurance. Means you're planning to die soon. It's about being prepared so that if the worst happens, you and your partner have one less thing to worry about. In fact, discussing a prenuptial agreement can be seen as deeply romantic. It says, "I love you enough to want clarity and fairness for both of us," no matter what happens. I want us to walk out of this relationship, if it ever comes to that, with dignity, not resentment. I don't want you to stay with me out of fear of financial hardship. I want you to stay because you genuinely want to. Unfortunately, not everyone sees it this way. Some marriages never happen because of disagreements over prenuptial arrangement, and others begin on shaky ground because one partner feels pressured to abandon their request. For instance, I've seen people fold under the pressure of a partner refusing to sign, agreeing to move forward without the prenuptial agreement just to avoid conflict. That's a dangerous precedent. If you can't discuss tough topics before the wedding, how will you navigate challenges during the marriage? The best time to talk about potential conflicts is when there isn't one. For example, discussing how you'd like to handle disagreements when you're both calm and happy is far better than learning in the heat of an argument. Similarly, a prenuptial arrangement can act as a roadmap for navigating financial disagreements before emotions cloud judgment. That said, not all prenuptial agreements are created equal, and some cross into absurd or even cruel territory. I've seen a shocking case where a prenuptial agreement stipulated that for every 10 pounds of weight a wife gained during the marriage, she would lose $10,000 a month in alimony. While distasteful, the contract was enforceable because it wasn't considered unconscionable at the time it was signed. Lawyer, don't judge the morality of these agreements. They focus on their structure. In that particular case, I'd advise my client to set her baseline weight as high as possible to protect her interests. Yes, this is why lawyers aren't always the life of the party. Another controversial clause that occasionally appears is the fidelity clause, which imposes penalties for infidelity. While it may seem straightforward, defining cheating is anything but. Is it a one-night stand drunken mistake? An emotional affair spanning months? A fidelity clause might seem like a deterrent, but in practice, it can create more problems than it solves. Ultimately, prenuptial arrangement is more than just a legal document. It's a conversation starter. It's an opportunity to set expectations, define boundaries, and ensure that both partners feel secure in the relationship. When done right, it's a testament to mutual respect and foresight, laying the groundwork for a partnership built on trust and understanding. When a man finds out his partner has been unfaithful, his first question is usually, "Did you sleep with him?" Meanwhile, when a woman learns her partner has cheated, her first question tends to be, "Do you love her?" That alone speaks volumes about the dynamics of men and women in relationships. It highlights the difference in what betrayal represents. Is this just about physical intimacy, or does it mean, "I don't love you anymore, and I'm out of this relationship"? These are profoundly different fears. A fidelity clause in a prenuptial agreement, something some people insist on attempts to define cheating and impose a penalty for it. But here's the thing. Cheating is already its own punishment. Infidelity doesn't just complicate your life, it wrecks it. At best, it drags you into a web of lies, half-truths, and hurt feelings, leaving you juggling the fallout with your partner, the person you cheated with, and sometimes their partner too. The pain spreads like wildfire. Adding a financial penalty to this chaos is like trying to deter drug use by making heroin illegal. Do you think a heroin addict pauses mid-shot and says, "Wait, this is illegal, I better not"? Of course not. Similarly, I doubt anyone on the verge of an affair thinks, "This could cost me $10,000. Better not risk it." Infidelity comes with enough inherent consequences. On the topic of prenuptial agreement, though, there is massive generational shift. In the present generation, the number of couples in their late 20s to early 30s, the prime marriage demographic getting prenuptial agreement, has skyrocketed. It's at least 5 times higher than it was 10 or 20 years ago. This generation approaches relationships with more pragmatism. Still, that pragmatism coexists with a performative social media culture, where couples constantly broadcast how perfect their relationships are. It's all cur-rated white teeth hiding rotting gums. Behind the couple goals posts, some of these relationships are crumbling. There are people whose social media paints them as the epitome of happiness. Then they show up in a lawyer office, the truth comes out. Their public declarations of love are often inversely proportional to their actual satisfaction. Empty barrels make the loudest noise. The louder someone proclaims their happiness, the more you should question what's beneath the surface.
True wealth doesn't need to announce itself. Some people worth $10 billion drives a modest Toyota RAV4, gets $10 haircuts, and wears unremarkable clothing. Compare that to some people who look incredibly rich, but are drowning in debt. It's the same with relationships. Those who flaunt their perfect love lives often have little substance to back it up. Meanwhile, the truly content couples don't feel the need to broadcast anything. This performative culture creates toxic comparisons. People go to lawyers saying, "My marriage isn't as good as theirs." But is that comparison even real? How much sex is enough? Who decides? Society doesn't have honest conversations about things like intimacy, so people end up chasing unrealistic standards. For example, couples might lament they're not having as much sex as they used to. But is that decrease natural? Does it reflect a shift in the relationship or a deeper issue? The key is to have those conversations openly and without blame. Often couples get stuck in what is called a death spiral. One person cheats because they're not getting what they need. The other stops giving because they feel unappreciated or hurt. Both dig in their heels, convinced they're right, and the relationship deteriorates. But here's the thing. At some point, these two people chose each other. They loved each other enough to commit. So, before it all falls apart, why not try some preventative maintenance? Preventative maintenance in relationships isn't rocket science. It's about small, consistent acts of kindness and appreciation. Remember when you first started dating? All the little things that made you feel noticed, valued, and loved. Those gestures fade over time, but they don't have to. For example, leave a note for your partner in the morning. It could be as simple as, "I loved hanging out with you last night. I'm so lucky to be with you." That takes all of 10 seconds, but it can have a profound impact. Many people dismiss this kind of advice because they feel awkward or assume it won't matter. It's free, and it strengthens your connection. Think of it like exercise. It's uncomfortable at first, but the long-term benefits are undeniable. In the same way, investing in your relationship pays dividends in the form of deeper intimacy and connection. The truth is, most people still believe in the possibility of lasting love. Studies show that 96% of divorced people want to remarry within 5 years. If love and marriage weren't worth it, why would anyone want to try again? And for those who get it right, who build a partnership that lasts? It's like winning the lottery. Life is terrifying and unpredictable, but having someone to hold your hand through it all, that's priceless. Yes, it requires effort. Yes, it means having uncomfortable conversations. But the reward, a connection so deep and enduring that it makes life's hardships a little less lonely, is worth every bit of discomfort. So why not trade the fleeting comfort of avoidance for the lasting joy of connection? Preventative maintenance might not sound romantic, but it could be the key to keeping your love alive. The ideology of unchecked growth for the sake of growth, reproduction for reproduction's sake, feels disturbingly hollow. Surely there's more to life than that. Shouldn't we aspire to improve the quality of life, to make the world and the experiences of others better? It's not for me to define intelligence entirely, but I can certainly spot foolishness when I see it. Similarly, good relationships may be hard to quantify, but we all recognize a bad one immediately. Consider this. What's more uncomfortable? Enduring a relationship where you're left alone to watch football while your partner simmers in mild dissatisfaction, or having an honest, albeit tough, conversation when things start slipping?
Preventative maintenance is always easier. It's far simpler to maintain a healthy weight than to gain 100 pounds and then struggle to lose it. Relationships are no different. Small, consistent efforts are far more effective than trying to repair years of neglect.
Jordan Peterson once said, "If you don't listen to her for 90 minutes a week, you'll be listening to her in divorce court." His hyperbolic delivery may be entertaining, but his message resonates. Invest in your relationship now through open communication and candor to avoid far greater pain later. The premise is simple. When something's on your mind, express it clearly, honestly, and with love. For example, if your partner makes a comment that bothers you, address it. "Hey, when you joked about my sister, it felt off. Maybe I misunderstood, but I value your relationship with her, and this matters to me." The key is timing and approach. Don't wait for conflict to escalate. Address things while the relationship is strong. Acknowledge your shared love, then express your concerns with care. Yes, it's scary, but the risk is worth it. Honest dialogue nurtures trust and prevents resentment. Take intimacy, for example, a cornerstone of romantic relationships. Many divorces trace back to a change in sexual connection, either as a cause or a symptom of deeper issues. It's not always about quantity. Men often seek more frequent sex, while women prioritize emotional and physical quality. The point isn't to generalize, but to highlight the need for ongoing communication. When sex becomes infrequent or non-existent, it signals a deeper disruption. Ignoring it is like ignoring a coal mine's warning signs you're heading toward disaster. Relationships are dynamic and require attention. Most marital problems boil down to two things: not knowing what you want and not knowing how to express it. If couples can master these two areas, they'll solve most of their challenges. The aftermath of neglect occurs daily. Lawyers tell stories, manipulate emotions to protect their clients. Infidelity is a common thread. It's not always the root cause, though. It often stems from unmet needs, neglect, or a lack of communication. Cheating rarely happens in a vacuum. It's part of a larger pattern. Shocking cases of people maintaining two families simultaneously, attending Christmas with both, all while keeping their lives compartmentalized. Affairs with in-laws, nannies, and even family friends happens. These situations are often the culmination of years of disconnects and unmet expectations. But here's the thing. It doesn't have to get to that point. Relationships thrive on paying attention, having hard conversations, and consistently investing in each other. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Whether it's about sex, communication, or life goals, staying engaged and honest can save relationships long before they reach the breaking point. There are situations where spouse tried to kill each other. Lots of couples deal with a lot of domestic violence and intimate partner abuse. Some couples fixate on the idea that he or she is his or her enemy, the cause of everything bad in his or her life. There are some extreme cases, more often than not, where one partner in a couple relationship struggle with suicide and self-harm, or there are cases where one partner decide to kill the spouse, take their own life. It's heartbreaking when someone feels like they've lost everything and can't imagine life post-divorce. Sometimes when justice isn't served, some people cry, frustrated, or harm each other from the beauty of the human spirit. Some people often moved by strength and resilience. There is a man who was fighting to get his dog back. It may sound trivial, but there's something so pure about the bond we share with animals. They don't care about our status or achievements. They just love us. This man, who was an older, tough guy, didn't care about the financial aspect of his divorce. His main priority was getting his dog back from his ex-wife. She knew how much the dog meant to him, but she didn't really love the animal, but she was fighting to keep it. The man fought for it, and eventually he got the dog back. When he was handed his dog, he broke down in tears, and other people around cried too. It was a moment of pure emotion. This simple, profound reunion meant everything to him.
It reminds us of the deep, uncomplicated love we have for our pets. Love, in its essence, is fleeting. We're always losing something. With pets, for instance, we know they won't be with us forever. The truth is, everything is temporary, and we're always losing things, even when we don't realize it. That's why I believe we should always approach love with awareness of its impermanence. It can be, but it's also incredibly meaningful. To love something is to open yourself up to the pain of loss, but it's also what makes life so rich. I've learned this through my life, but also through personal experiences. When you work as a hospice volunteer and witnessed firsthand how fragile life is, everything is transient. Even our relationships with our loved ones change daily. You could see your child one day, and the next, they've grown and are no longer the same person. We're always moving forward, and sometimes it takes loss to make us realize how precious something was. When you lose something, you often remember how amazing it was only when it's gone. You realize how easily we take things for granted until they're no longer there. See love as something we borrow, rather than something we own. Love is loaned to us. The dog you love, the people you care about, they're not permanent possessions. We're all living on borrowed times. If we could just hold on to that awareness, we might appreciate the people and the animals we love a little more. If you really understood how precious those moments are, you'd savor every second. And then there's the inevitable loss. Yes, it's a part of life, but it doesn't make it any less beautiful. It's insane to love because you know you'll eventually experience the pain of losing it, but I'd rather feel that pain than never experience love at all. We all have an infinite capacity for love. It doesn't matter what we lose. We're constantly losing things in life, but that doesn't mean we stop loving. It's actually brave to love because it's scary. If there's no fear in it, it's not brave. It's terrifying to open yourself up to something that might break your heart. But the joy it brings in the meantime is worth every risk. The same goes for romantic love. Hearts get broken, we fall apart, but we also heal in love. It's a cycle, one that we keep repeating because that's what life is. Sometimes it's just too beautiful. It's all beautiful, even though it's a game we can never win. But we keep playing it, we keep doing it. Maybe that's something profound, something about the nature of God. We come from something, we disconnect, and then we spend our whole lives trying to reconnect. Sometimes when speaking of love, you could see the emotion on people's face. Sometimes it seems love and marriage were doomed ideas, but now it's everything. I think I get it better than most people because of the work I do. We keep putting these huge bets on the table because we believe the prize is worth it. But I also think we need to start viewing romantic relationships as chapters in a long book. We don't need soulmates. Whoever came up with the idea of soulmates deserves a special place in history. They really helped the divorce industry. The idea that one person is the one can trap us into thinking we picked the wrong partner if we're not always perfectly satisfied. But that's an illusion. Just because you love the cat you have now doesn't mean you didn't love the cat you had before. And it's the same with people. Just because you love one person doesn't mean you couldn't love someone else too. Love is infinite. We need to look at relationships as chapters, not failures when they end. Did you grow from it? Did you learn more about what you want or don't want? What about how you give and receive love? These are the important questions. What's appealing to you in your 20s will be different in your 30s, 40s, and 50s. It's like this. You ask a 20-year-old what car they want, and they'll say a Lamborghini. But they've never thought about what that car will mean when they're older, when they have kids, when the Lamborghini just won't fit with their life anymore. We also need to stop comparing our relationships to unrealistic ideals, like the ones we see in rom-coms. Those stories end before the real struggles even start. Titanic, the perfect romance only because it ended before it could get messy. Relationships are messy, and if you talk to a couple that's unhappy, Ask them about how they met, and suddenly they'll soften. They'll talk about how it was all possibility back then, how they were choosing each other. It's easy to forget that have a conversation with a teenager. He may be critical of his or her father. Asked him, "What are you comparing your father to? Your idea of a perfect father, or the father you actually know?" If we're comparing people to some idealized version of them, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment. You can't compare a partner to an imagined perfect person, or you'll always be dissatisfied. We need to stop comparing relationships to fantasy and start comparing them to real life. And man, the number of marriages that end right after the vows are said are few. It happens. Some people get cold feet or rush into it on a whim. There are marriages that ended in 48 hours, sometimes with annulments. It's crazy. And then there's money, the second biggest reason for divorce. Not the typical someone's broke issue, though. It's about transparency. Money is power, and when there's a lack of transparency, it creates tension. We have seen many divorces when one partner loses their job. For men, this can be especially tough because their role as a provider and protector is intertwined with their identity. When that job disappears, it can trigger depression, and that's hard for relationships to withstand. It's different when women lose their jobs. It doesn't seem to have the same effect on marriages, at least in heterosexual couples. When men lose their jobs, though, it often spells trouble. It's fascinating to see how these dynamics play out, but the underlying issue is power, and money's role in it. It's a complicated thing that we don't always talk about openly, but it's at the heart of many relationship struggles. When it comes to money, it's never just about the dollars. It's about what money represents: power, control, respect, and the ability to create something in the world. Earlier, we talked about how giving legal and human advice about money isn't always straightforward. Should you tell your partner how much you earn? Well, there's a legal side to it, especially in cases like divorce, where discovery is mandatory. This means you're entitled to look at your partner's financials. Lawyers spend lots of time combing through records, credit card statements, bank accounts, and other documents to trace where the money went. And trust me, when someone says they've got the receipts, they're usually talking about something pretty different from the receipts that are subpoenaed from credit card companies or employers. It's hard to hide money these days. Everything leaves a trace. That said, some people try. There's this one story of a footballer who allegedly transferred everything to his mother's name to avoid his assets being seized during a divorce. It sounds like an intriguing move, but the law catches on to this. In many places, these transfers are flagged as fraudulent if they're done with the intention of dodging legal obligations. So, if someone sells a car or asset for far less than it's worth to hide it, a court can void that transaction. But what if it was done before there was any suspicion of a divorce? As long as it's not done in contemplation of a divorce, it's fair game. We have seen this play out quite a few times, especially with wealthy individuals in finance who take extraordinary steps over the years to shield assets from a potential divorce. Sometimes, though, the shock isn't in someone hiding wealth. It's in discovering the debts they've been hiding. Many people live under the illusion of wealth, but they're actually carrying a lot of debt. This happens often in celebrity divorces, where appearances of affluence aren't backed by the reality of ownership. Credit card debts, leased cars, and large mortgages mean people may be living with little equity. If you think you're getting 50% of your partner's assets, don't forget that their debts come with it. The reality is, people often don't own what they think they do. Their house, their car, and even their jewelry could be under heavy financial obligations. On the flip side, what happens when someone hides their wealth and their partner thinks they're broke? That's where the funny stories happen. Lawyers have worked with people who suddenly came into a massive fortune, like a person who won the lottery. He went from barely scraping by to being a multi-millionaire, and his wife, who'd been unhappy in the marriage, was suddenly thrilled. Why? because she'd get half. They divorced almost immediately. But for those who didn't see it coming, the idea that their partner's financial situation wasn't what they thought can be a huge shock. It's a reminder that what you see isn't always the whole picture. Now, when it comes to LGBTQ couples, do the same principles apply? Yes, in many ways they do.
The dynamics of love and impermanence, just like in heterosexual relationships, are still there. But there's an added layer of freedom that comes with being marginalized for so long. When society forces you to the edges, it gives you a certain autonomy. LGBTQ couples often make their own rules because they weren't bound by traditional expectations, which frankly can be stifling. In some ways, they've had to create their own definitions of relationships, and when marriage equality was finally passed, many didn't know what to make of it. People who'd been in a long-term relationship are indifferent when marriage was legalized.
They lived without the pressure of marriage for so long that when it became an option, it suddenly forced them into a conversation they'd never had before. Where is this going? LGBTQ couples have, in many ways, reinvented the relationship script, and that has its own set of challenges and joys. Just like heterosexual couples, they're figuring things out as they go. Lawyers worked with a number of gay and lesbian couples going through divorces, and while the honeymoon phase of marriage equality is still fresh, we'll see if it becomes just as complicated and difficult as it can be for anyone else. As for open relationships, I'll say this. Many people who try them usually end up in lawyer's office for divorce. So while one can't definitively say that open relationships or polyamory can't work, we haven't seen it succeed in my experience. I've never witnessed it in my personal life, and professionally, I see the fallout more than I see the success stories. It's important to note, though, that the culture isn't ready to have an honest conversation about monogamy either. We like to ignore the complexities, like when we see someone cheating but don't confront it because the relationship is built on non-monogamous terms without openly acknowledging it.
In some relationships, it's a silent agreement. Partners tolerate affairs, sometimes, without even making a fuss about it. It's a part of how they stay together, and though it might sound surprising, it's more common than you think. The real question, though, is, have you ever seen an affair happen while someone is still deeply in love? That's the part we don't talk about enough. I can't say for sure whether someone is in love or not, but I can share my thoughts. Love is both an emotion and a verb, and over the years, I've seen situations where people were having affairs, yet appeared fully committed to their marriages in every other way. They were great providers, dedicated parents, emotionally attuned to their partners, and still kept up some level of sexual intimacy, even if it wasn't exactly a regular thing. But here's the question. Can you cheat and still be in love? Sure, you could argue the word cheat itself is interesting. Think about it. When we talk about a cheat meal while on a diet, it's something you do occasionally to treat yourself, and then you go back to your routine. It's the same with our human desire for variety and passion. I'm not a religious person, but the 10 Commandments, whether you take them literally or not, show us that even in the earliest rules handed down to humanity, infidelity was considered a major issue. Out of 10 rules, 2 of them were about not cheating or coveting someone else's spouse. This tells you just how long this has been a struggle for us. It's human nature to wrestle with monogamy, with our desires. Freud, philosophers, historians, everyone has grappled with it. Why? Because at the core, sex, love, and relationships shape much of what we do, whether we admit it or not. A lot of the things men strive for are to attract the attention of women or potential sexual partners. Look at the entire manosphere or red pill movement. It's all about appealing to women or getting attention. Now, should we get married? From a job security perspective, I hope we do. But honestly, I don't think marriage is for everyone. We shouldn't just assume we should get married.
We need to ask ourselves, what problem is marriage solving for me? Because when someone says they want to get married, it should be a valid question to ask why. Just like if someone says they want to start a podcast or move to Florida. What's the motivation behind it? Over the years, when I've posted about my skepticism of marriage, I've had tons of responses, from people saying it's the best way to raise kids to it being a commitment to work through problems, rather than run from them. There are religious reasons too. Marriage as a covenant with God. That's a belief many hold dear, and that's okay. I respect it, but my beliefs don't require you to adopt mine. Some argue marriage facilitates love, but I don't think they're intrinsically linked. Marriage, to me, is a symbol, a representation of love, not the love itself. You can love someone deeply without needing the label or the contract. But there's something beautiful in the tradition of marriage. When two people are so excited about their connection that they want to shout it from the rooftops, to publicly commit to each other, that is what I love. It's about finding a person who makes you feel seen, who supports you, challenges you, and loves you through everything. And yes, marriage rings serve as a constant reminder. This person is mine, and I am theirs. That's beautiful, but you don't need a certificate or a legal contract to have that love. Yet I can't ignore that a ring or a public commitment has its benefits too. It serves as a symbol of devotion that holds you accountable to others and to yourself. It's like publicly declaring you want to quit smoking. You're asking the people around you to support you, to help you stay true to your goal. Marriage can do the same. It holds us accountable, not just to each other, but to the world that recognizes the commitment. But let's get real. Marriage is often more about legal status and government involvement than anything else. Still, the love and support that come with it are what people cherish. In many ways, it's just a symbol, but it's a symbol that has powerful meaning. When most people say they're getting married, they rarely ask themselves why. They'll say, "Because I'm in love." But what does that actually mean? Why does love require marriage? If we peel back the layers, we find that it's a way to declare commitment, to say, "I choose you," publicly, for better or worse. But it's not about the contract itself. It's about the connection, the mutual understanding that love isn't just about feeling good. It's about supporting each other through thick and thin. Now let's dive into something really personal. When was the first time you experienced true love? For me, the answer is layered. It's a beautiful question because it's triggering all kinds of memories. I think about my father, a man who wasn't emotionally expressive. Growing up, he wasn't the type to say, "I love you." But there's this one memory that stands out. I was at my friend Tom's house, and we had pizza. We were kids, so we ate fast, leaving just a couple of slices for my dad. Instead of taking them for himself, he offered them to us. That moment hit me hard. It wasn't said, but it was love. It wasn't about the pizza. It was about his quiet sacrifice. Later, when I had kids, I understood that kind of love. You'd give up everything for them, even the smallest joy. It's not about sacrifice. It's about joy in giving. That's true love. Leave with a deeper understanding and appreciation for love in its many forms. And with that appreciation comes a desire to act to love deeply, knowing that time is precious. After hearing this, I'm going to cherish every moment I have with the people I love. In acknowledging that impermanence, we can truly appreciate how precious it is. So go ahead, cuddle your loved ones, hold them close. Love isn't forever, but while we have it, we should treat it like the treasure it is. Certainly, below is a condensed version of a 10,000-word article exploring the implications for society when human relationships such as those between male and female sex, marriage, and social life are commodified. Due to space constraints, I will provide a detailed outline and a sample section. You can expand each section to reach the desired word count. the process of transforming intangible aspects of life, for example, relationships, emotions, and social interactions, into marketable goods or services. The commodification of human relationships, particularly between males and females, sex, marriage, and social life, has profound implications for societal norms, individual identity, and the structure of modern communities. The historical, cultural, economic, and psychological dimensions of commodification, focusing on its impact on gender dynamics, intimacy, and social cohesion. Historical context of commodification in relationships. Traditional versus modern relationships. How relationships were historically rooted in social, economic, and familial ties, rather than market dynamics. The rise of capitalism, the shift from agrarian to industrial societies, and the emergence of consumer culture. Examples: dowries, arranged marriages, and the historical treatment of women as property. Transition to modernity, the influence of urbanization, technology, and globalization on relationship dynamics. The commodification of sex. Sex as a marketable product. The rise of the sex industry, pornography, and the normalization of transactional relationships. Impact on gender roles. How commodification reinforces stereotypes and power imbalances between men and women. Psychological consequences. The effects on self-esteem, intimacy, and emotional well-being. Case studies. The rise of OnlyFans, sugar dating, and the normalization of casual sex. The commodification of marriage. Marriage as a transaction. The shift from marriage as a social institution to a market-driven contract. Wedding industry. The commercialization of weddings and the pressure to conform to idealized standards. Divorce industry. The economic incentives behind divorce proceedings and prenuptial agreements. Impact on family structures. How commodification affects parenting, family dynamics, and intergenerational relationships. The commodification of social life. Social media and relationships. The role of platforms like Instagram, Tinder, and Facebook in transforming social interactions into marketable experiences. Influencer culture. The monetization of personal lives and the pressure to present a curated image. Loneliness and isolation. Asterisk. How commodification undermines genuine connections and fosters superficial relationships. The rise of friendship for hire services and the impact of dating apps on social norms. Gender dynamics and power imbalances. The male perspective. How commodification affects men's expectations and behaviors in relationships. The female perspective. Asterisk. The pressure on women to conform to market-driven standards of beauty and desirability. Intersectionality. The compounded effects of commodification on marginalized groups, including LGBTQ+ individuals and people of color. Feminist critique. The tension between empowerment and exploitation in commodified relationships. Economic and cultural drivers of commodification. Consumer culture. The role of advertising, media, and entertainment in shaping societal values. Globalization. The spread of Western ideals of relationships and beauty standards. Technological advancements. The impact of AI, virtual reality, and other innovations on human connections. The rise of mail-order brides and international dating services. Psychological and emotional consequences. Alienation and disconnection. How commodification leads to a sense of detachment and loneliness. Mental health issues. The rise of anxiety, depression, and other disorders linked to commodified relationships. The erosion of authenticity. The difficulty of forming genuine connections in a market-driven world. Case studies. The psychological impact of online dating and virtual relationships. Ethical and philosophical considerations. The dehumanization of relationships. The ethical implications of treating people as commodities. The role of consent. Asterisk. The blurred lines between choice and coercion in commodified interactions. Philosophical perspectives. Insights from thinkers like Karl Marx, Simone de Beauvoir, and Erich Fromm. The future of humanity. the long-term consequences of commodification on societal values and human evolution. Resistance and alternatives. Counter-movements. Efforts to resist commodification, such as minimalism, anti-consumerism, and ethical dating practices. Community building. The importance of fostering genuine connections and rebuilding social trust. Policy recommendations. Legal and regulatory measures to address exploitation and inequality. Examples of communities and individuals who have successfully resisted commodification. The commodification of sex is one of the most visible and controversial aspects of the broader trend toward market-driven relationships. In pre-modern societies, sex was often regulated by cultural, religious, and familial norms, serving as a means of procreation and social bonding. However, in contemporary society, sex has become a commodity, a product to be bought, sold, and consumed. This shift has profound implications for individuals and society as a whole. The rise of the sex industry is a clear manifestation of this trend. From pornography to prostitution, sex is increasingly treated as a service that can be monetized. Platforms like OnlyFans have further blurred the lines between personal intimacy and commercial transactions, allowing individuals to profit from their sexuality. While some argue that this represents a form of empowerment, others contend that it reinforces harmful stereotypes and perpetuates gender inequality. The normalization of transactional relationships has also altered societal perceptions of intimacy. Dating apps like Tinder and Bumble encourage users to approach relationships as a marketplace, swiping through potential partners as if they were products on a shelf. This commodification of human connection reduces individuals to their market value, prioritizing superficial attributes like physical appearance over deeper qualities like character and compatibility. Moreover, the commodification of sex has significant psychological consequences. For many, the pressure to conform to market-driven standards of desirability leads to feelings of inadequacy and low self-esteem. The constant comparison to idealized images in media and pornography can distort perceptions of normalcy, creating unrealistic expectations and undermining genuine intimacy. In conclusion, the commodification of sex represents a fundamental shift in how society views and values human relationships. While it offers new opportunities for economic gain and personal expression, it also poses serious challenges to emotional well-being, gender equality, and social cohesion. Addressing these issues requires a nuanced understanding of the forces driving commodification and a commitment to fostering healthier, more authentic forms of connection. This section can be expanded with additional examples, statistics, and scholarly references to reach the desired word count. Each of the outlined sections can be developed similarly to create a comprehensive 10,000 word article. Let me know if you'd like further assistance with specific sections. A final. Though marriage is a deeply emotional, cultural, and personal decision, but given its risks, it's worth asking yourself tough questions before taking the plunge. Is this truly the right person? Or is it the allure of the institution itself? It's not about abandoning the idea of marriage, but about entering it with both your heart and your logic in balance. The far-reaching implications of commodification on relationships and society. The need for collective awareness and action to preserve the authenticity of human connections. Final reflection. The enduring value of love, empathy, and genuine relationships in an increasingly commodified world.